Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the IBEN Insights podcast. I am Cam Kravitz. Really happy to have you back. We are still really excited with all of the positive reception that we've been receiving from the podcast. I think we're really starting to get into a flow of it now. I think this is our fourth episode. And so if you've listened to one of them, if you've listened to all of them, thank you for being a part of it nonetheless. And if you missed the news in the previous edition of the podcast, we're now publicly posting these videos online. They're not privately listed anymore, so you can subscribe to the channel. You don't have to access it exclusively through the IBEN Insider, but we'll always send it out there anyways as well for you. But if you subscribe to the channel, you might get it a day or two early if you are one of our super fans, so to say. So thank you to everybody listening. Some more really exciting news, some housekeeping that we have before we get into our conversation with Caleb and Arooj, is that next month we are going to be opening applications for 2027 webinar host applications. And you might be thinking, why are you introducing this during the podcast? If you are the more dedicated IBEN, you will probably realize that our podcast guests are our webinar hosts. We film it right after the first webinar. The topics that we discuss during the podcast itself are basically the topics that are discussed in the webinar in a much more condensed version. So if you are interested in being a guest on the podcast, I would highly recommend that you apply to lead a webinar. I think Caleb and Arooj can personally attest to how fun, leading the webinar is. They've only done one. They haven't done all three yet. So maybe we'll ask them at the end of the day. I've already had a few people reach out interested about that. So keep an eye out for that in your August IBEN Insider. That should be the third Wednesday of August that comes out. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guests for today, starting with Arooj Naveed, an educator by profession, a water enthusiast by choice, an educator and facilitator with a passion for inquiry-based learning. She has 7 years of experience within the IB, starting all the way back from the PYP to the MYP. Currently, she is an examiner for integrated humanities. Her passion for education extends far beyond teaching. She is a researcher and has published her practices of teaching and learning, integrating them with her achievements in sustainable development goals. Her latest publication, entitled Water Agency, a conceptual framework for building water-resistant communities in Pakistan, brings together the educational framework of agency towards the achievement of the Social Development Goal 11, 16, and 17. I'm going to have to go way back into my global environmental affairs minor that I did in college to try and pull that information back, so you might need to refresh me on that later. But beyond that work, Arooj is an avid reader, researcher, and writer who loves to travel and explore the world. Caleb Cook, our other guest today, which, by the way, I love a name that has two hard consonants as your initials. I'm a little biased, perhaps. Just really, yes, grabs a room, He is an international educator for nearly 30 years, having taught in Canada, Chile, South Korea, Poland, and now Turkey, of which he has had a wide cultural base to explore the concept of agency. His research specialization is the intersection of international curriculum and local curriculum and how teacher agency emerges within these educational assemblage ecosystems. His doctoral research at University of Calgary focuses on the growing field of post-human and post-material agential realism. My apologies for the pronunciation there, as well as the temporal chordal triad of agency. Did I get that one, Caleb?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Specifically exploring how educators navigate and manifest agency within complex dual curriculum environments. With a master's in international education and educational leadership and a multidisciplinary background in sociology, psychology, and anthropology from Carleton University, Cook brings together 2 decades of experience in the Turkish education system to his work. His scholarship is characterized by a critical critique of exam-focused test prep, washback, leading to learnification. His commitment is to move beyond the performative banking model of education towards more relational and agentic pedagogical framework, creating opportunities for the for the beautiful risk in genuine lifelong learning habits. Did I get most of that
Yes.
right?
Yes,
Boy,
that's quite a mouthful. You did great, Cam. Thank you.
lovely. I really need to like read the bio maybe a few more times before just doing it live on the air. But so thank you for bearing with me. But with that, I'd love to get straight into our conversation on agency. I've kind of hinted at it a few times in your bio, Caleb, as I was reading it. That's our big topic for the day is how to integrate the idea and the concept of agency in our IBEN roles. And, maybe we can learn a thing or two about how to use it in our day-to-day lives as well. And by agency, I don't mean the CIA. I don't mean MI6 or any of these agencies per se, but rather the type of agency that allows you, the listener, me, Caleb, Arooj, to take charge in your day-to-day life. And the Merriam-Webster definition of agency is the capacity, condition, or state of acting or of exerting power. So today we will discuss how IBEN can use their own internal agency in their roles and also how it affects the entire IB community. So to start this conversation off, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with this lovely analogy. This is now our third straight episode where we've had a beautiful visual metaphor to get us started. So I really like this trend that we're on. So here is this was shared with me by Caleb and Arooj beforehand, before today's podcast. And I want to hand it over to you because I have my own kind of description of what this is, but I think you guys could both explain it beautifully. So I'll pass it over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Cam. I guess I'll start. Within any system, we need to recognize the values and traditions and culture. And so the IBEN community has a very strong culture that promotes, collaboration and has very strong roots in developing lifelong learning. And any school has its own cultural constraints or limitations that we need to consider. And we need to think of them not as barriers, but as opportunities to help channel our efforts so that we can promote growth and empowerment through the corridors within any system. So the headwaters are the IB, and the policies and practices that are in place to help guide our initiatives, and that collectively, as a group of people, the edges, the walls, the mountain edges, the cliffs, they impact one another. So Giddens' structuration theory is that these are not independent things, but like the people that are within the system have an impact on the system itself, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of like this analogy, right? Is it's we are as IBEN, we are not necessarily the end all be all experts on the world of IB, right? We are a part of an ecosystem where at the very base of that ecosystem is our schools, our teachers, our students, and without them, us as the IBEN glacier, so to say, also cannot exist. We cannot coexist without one or the other. And I think it's also a really interesting kind of callback to the discussion we had last month on the podcast about intercultural communication and being understanding of people with different backgrounds from us, because I think this kind of ties all of that together really well to show we are all a part of one ecosystem at the end of the day. It's a beautiful sort of metaphor. So I'd love to maybe hone in a little bit more on that friction piece, because I see this friction here as also being a sort of example of the events that we do as IBEN. This right here is our school visit, right? This is our
Yeah.
evaluation visit. This is our exam, right? At the very base of it. Am I far off in seeing that?
No, no, we would agree. That's one way to look at it. And so, as an examiner, or going on a consultation or an inspection visit, we have to recognize that the own school ecosystem and how it interacts with us as representatives from IBEN. And friction is something that we can't avoid. And it's really important in terms of agency to work through these frictions and to overcome potential conflict rather than just avoid conflict. One way to look at it is that if there's no interaction between the walls or the constraints and the people, then there's no momentum, there's no movement, there's no change. And we need to appreciate that there are going to be moments of conflict. And instead of just avoiding that conflict, we need to find ways to resolve it and work around it and develop and overcome those frictional moments.
So maybe
And
oh yeah, sorry, Arooj, go right ahead.
I just wanted to add that when we talk about agency and we talk about the three important elements of voice, choice, and ownership, we are particularly looking about the idea of being active learners in our role, and then paving the way for those choices and that ownership to take its path towards collaborative learning and development.
Yeah, and actually, my next question perfectly leads into that. Speaking of ownership and speaking of collaboration, in a lot of our IBEN roles, we're not working alone, right? We are kind of a part of a group or a collective. We're on a school visit. We have other, a workshop, not a workshop leader, sorry, a school visit team member, a leader. There's a whole team of people that are there with us. So if I am an IBEN and I have my own goals, my own desires out of an event, an outcome that I want. How do I reconcile that with maybe somebody else on my event? Or, maybe I'm not getting along with my principal examiner. There's so many examples in our IBEN work of having to collaborate. How do I still practice agency? How do I still have my own ownership over what I'm doing when I have to collaborate with others, right?
Okay, so one way to look at that is in terms of a pre-action orientation. So before you go on a visit or a workshop, to start that collaboration before you're actually at the school. And so that way you can get a sense of their values and their goals and their needs, as well as your own personal goals and your needs. Designing collaborative goals takes time, and it should be done before we actually interact. We should have communication through emails and whatnot, so that we can focus in on what their needs are, as well as our personal needs and the IBEN needs as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure, Rouge, if you have any personal experience maybe with that, a little bit of that friction, or maybe like Caleb was saying, the ability to communicate beforehand to kind of get on the same page.
Yeah,
And I'm
I think
totally throwing you on the spot there. So,
that's perfectly fine.
yeah.
But I would like to go back to the example where we had an IBAN authorization visit. And before the authorization visit even had to take place, and that would bring Caleb's theory into practice, is that the IBAN authorization team made sure that they had communication with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they would introduce their part of what they wanted us to know, what they wanted us to ask, even before coming and visiting the school itself. So when they came to visit us, we were very confident with the idea of being able to exercise our own voice and they being able to tell us about the vision, mission statement of IBEN itself that would actually come together and, pave a way in which both the IBEN and me as an individual in my own role at that time would see how we could bring perhaps the IB learner profile attributes and my curriculum together. So this
Mm-hmm.
was a great example of how an IBIN team can work together collaboratively with the school leaders, school teachers, and the school staff as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate that example because maybe this is a little of a self-report here by me. I have not had the chance to go on a school visit yet in my 3 or almost 4 years now of being a part of IBEN. So I think I need to get on to one of these visits. It sounds like it's a very transformational experience. So based on what you've told me, it sounds like the amount of thought and the amount of planning that goes into each one of these visits is, really special. And so to all of my authorization, I've been out there. I will join you one of these days on a visit, and I will practice the GIDEN structuration theory as we have talked about today. So that's a great way to kind of wrap up that part of our conversation. So thank you, Arooj. So now I'm going to move on to something maybe a little bit more outside of the IBEN scope. Still related to IBEN as we're moving more and more into this more online sort of world, but the idea of generative AI, very scary, kind of the boogeyman. I'm not perhaps its biggest proponent either. My official IB stance, of course, is that we are embracing it slowly. We're seeing how it is going to be moving with us in the future, and it's not really going anywhere. So we kind of have to learn how to adapt with it. Right. And then on the other hand, with this conversation of agency, we're kind of in a bit of an agency crisis. There's a few ways in which AI is eroding our ability to make our own choices and have that really important agency, right? And sometimes even, that friction that we talked about in the first segment, it's still good because you're able to get a positive outcome, but with AI, kind of just it's not even there. You don't have the choice, right? A few examples of this, these days you can't Google something without the first thing in your face. It's Gemini. You don't even have the choice to just instantly see what you're looking for. You have to see the AI answer first. Or, maybe you're reading an online article from, maybe even a trusted news outlet, but you don't know if it's truly, a staff writer or if it's AI at this point. Even in some professional settings, right? We don't have the ability to see what exactly is real and what might have come from a computer. So all of these concepts that before, we used to have agency over, maybe starting to go away a little bit. But of course, we'll see how this will impact us as IBEN in the future. It's a concept that we've kind of talked about on and off on the podcast in the first few episodes here. But I'd love to ask both of you, how do I, in this 21st century and this kind of evolving AI ecosystem, how do I keep my sense of agency in life, in my IBEN roles? Totally open-ended question for both of you.
All right. For me, it's more interconnected with the concept of agency itself. So when we talk about ownership as individuals in our own IBEN role, we still have that ownership and the choice to, make the difference about how we can make a difference in how well we can retain our cognitive ability or not. So when we were, for example, designing our webinar itself, so we had that element of artificial intelligence being used. However, we were still utilizing our cognitive ability because we were going over the slides to see where artificial intelligence has been correct or incorrect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were just rephrasing on the ideas that we actually, as IBEN members, wanted to let our audience know about, and what actually artificial intelligence had phrased it for us. So,
Mm-hmm.
Caleb, would you like to add something?
Yeah, exactly. As long as it's a tool, it has a lot of potential. And we cannot be tempted to cognitively offload, right? So if it starts to like think for us, then we're kind of sacrificing our agency just out of something that is easy. So there are a lot of studies that show that if you know how to do something, so like using your examples, if you know how to write an email or you know how to distinguish a news feed as being authentic or genuine, then the AI can enhance that capacity. But if you don't learn how to structure an essay, right, or you don't know how to do an annotated bibliography, or you don't know how to create your own schedule, then those are the skills that will slowly erode, and that
Mm-hmm.
potentially your actual neural development can atrophy if you're not using those cognitive skills, and you're cognitively offloading. So I don't, just think for yourself, and practice these skills. Do these things. Don't fall into the habit of having AI schedule your vacation or do all these things for you. I know it's tempting, I know it's easy, but we have to maintain our own cognitive capacity and not
Mm-hmm.
offload all these things.
I really relate with what both of you were discussing there. In some ways I feel like I got the last flight out of the airport, so to say, because I graduated in December of 2022 from college, which is just about when
Yeah,
ChatGPT
yeah.
was launched, the following spring. And it's really convenient for me in retrospect to say, oh, I would have never used any of that. But I am just very glad that it wasn't even the tempting sort of platform that was there for me to use. And
I would argue that through our IBEN roles, like we can help build these guardrails. So like obviously a student or a teacher is going to use AI to create something. But like if we can flip it, right? If we can use that product as part of the process, right? So like you have the AI product, but you use that as a base, as a template to synthesize, evaluate. Like there is a lot of potential benefits, as long as we're not just having the product be the end, right? If we can loop that into that cycle of creativity, then I think we're okay.
okay. Well, that is a very optimistic, positive outlook. And that's the one that I'm going to take with me after today's meeting. I will stop being an AI pessimist. I'll stop being cynical. I will keep that in mind. I think, we all use it as a tool in certain ways for sure. I think certainly the alarm bells in my head, ring a little bit more. Hopefully, Terminator doesn't come after me after watching this
Well, we're
podcast
a
in
long
20
way
years.
from that there, Cam.
You know
It's
what's funny?
it's not
I
as
actually,
agentic as it's marketed.
well, that's good. That's a positive. I did rewatch Terminator a few weeks ago, and it actually takes place in, I think, like 2028 or 2029. So it
Yeah,
is like
yeah.
it's pretty close. Hopefully, it doesn't come to that. But either way, I think that this has been a fantastic conversation on agency, on how we can use it both in our IBIN lives and and then of course taking it outside as well into the rest of the world. I just want to thank Caleb and Arooj once again for joining me today for another wonderful conversation on the podcast. Are there any closing thoughts that either of you would like to send our IBEN away with today?
I think I have one for cultural context, that in our IBAN roles and in the cultural context that we still have a lot of space, that learning capacity to be able to retain our agency and, be able to retain our cognitive ability to be able to think and learn and to be able to create. So I think as IBAN members, in our own specific roles, let's just brainstorms individually on the idea of how well and where and how can we retain it best.
That is a
Yeah.
wonderful closing thought. And to everybody listening, you should write down what Aruj just said, put it on your refrigerator, and look at it every day before you go off to your IBAN events or even just your daily life. So, anything with you, Caleb?
Yeah, thanks, Cam. I just like to say that in today's age, we need to focus more on the process rather than the product. And that, as an IBEN community, if we focus on that process of communicating and developing relational trust and setting collaborative goals, that's really where the work has to focus on. So as a IBEN community, if we model all right, then that hopefully it will, flow through the school ecosystem so that the teachers and students also value the process. It's just too tempting to think of, well, okay, well, here's my essay.
Mhm.
Fair enough. But if you've gone through that process of writing it, that's where the real learning is, right? It's like, just because you get the end result, don't let people cheat themselves and focus on the process and the friction.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite part about these podcasts that I've been doing. You mentioned the idea of collaboration, and I've never had the opportunity to just be able to speak so candidly with educators from around the world on all of these different topics. And so it's been really special for me. And so that was kind of something that highlighted there in what you said, and kind of the agency for all of us to be here today, and pick the conversation that we wanted to have, and really get into the meat and potatoes of it. And so I want to thank both of you again, Caleb and Arooj, for joining me today. And to all of the listeners, thank you again for listening this month, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you.